What's going on, Alabama fans? Chris Daughtry here. I am your host here at the Alabama Football Report, and we appreciate you guys for joining us today. Before we get into today's show, I want to ask you guys one question. Do you want us to break down some 2024 depth charts for Alabama? Super excited for this season in the Kalen DeBoer era now here at Alabama. If you want us to break down some of those depth charts for you guys, type me right now in the comments section. Coming up on today's show, you guys know Cole Cubelic, right? He's an Auburn alum. He's on SEC Network. He's a sideline guy for SEC Network as well. And he also does a show with Greg McElroy. And he recently did a show where he talked about Alabama a lot and what they've got and what they can bring to the table this year, and kind of compared and contrast some things with the Auburn Tigers as well. He talked about the wide receiver room. He thinks Auburn has a better wide receiver room than Alabama, as well as the running back room, which I've got some thoughts on that. He also talked about Kadyn Proctor and whether or not his transferring to Iowa and then back to Alabama, missing spring ball, will affect his development in any kind of way. And then he also talked about Jalen Milroe and where he has to improve this year for Alabama. To start us off, we're going to talk about what he said about the wide receiver room and whether or not he thinks Alabama or Auburn has the better wide receiver room. This is what he had to say. He said, "I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I would probably lean Auburn right now. With the transfers coming in and what Alabama has back, now, Kendrick Law could be great. We've seen a little bit of him. He's been pretty good. Prentice has done some really good things as well. I think the Germie Bernard kid that they brought in from Washington, I think it's close. But if Cam Coleman ends up being what he's supposed to be and the other guys do what they did at other places, this could be an Auburn lean right here. It's wild that I'm saying that, but Bama's kind of been wide receiver U for the past 5 or 6 years. So that's crazy to think about, that Auburn actually could take a step ahead of what Alabama has been recently, but the guys are going to have to live up to their billing if that's going to be feasible. So before we get into it and before we break it down for you guys, I want to hear from you guys at the pinned comment. Who do you think has the better wide receiver room? If you think it's Alabama, type Bama at that pinned comment. And if you think it's Auburn, type AUB at the pinned comment as well. If that ad comes here on YouTube, that's fine. You don't want to watch it anyways. Just go down there and let me know right now in the comment section. This is what Auburn's bringing to the table this year at that wide receiver position. Got Cam Coleman coming in, a super talented freshman that anybody would be lucky to have on their team. He's a 5-star, number 2 wide receiver in this past year's class, as well as Perry Thompson coming in, a guy that was committed to Alabama for a long time, ends up flipping to Auburn. He was a 4-star, number 44 overall, and then number 11 wide receiver, Bryce Kane, another 4-star wide receiver. Malcolm Simmons, another 4-star wide receiver. And then Sam Jackson, he transferred in. He was a quarterback at TCU and Cal. So I guess they're moving him to the wide receiver position here at Auburn. But then you also look at the production of what the guys coming back as well as the guys transferred in, what they have done. Camden Brown hasn't really done much. Caleb Burton really didn't do much. Keandre Lambert-Smith was very good at Penn State, as well as Robert Lewis. He was also really good at Georgia State as well. It's got to be a step up in competition, obviously, for him. But, the biggest thing I think for those guys is Peyton Thorne going to be any good? You still got to have somebody to get them the ball. You look over to what Alabama is bringing in at the wide receiver room. These are the guys that had the most stats for Alabama coming into this season, their career stats. Prentice, probably one of your top guys after 2 years, 651 yards, 4 touchdowns. Germie Bernard, Cole brought him up. I think he's going to be really good as well for Alabama. And then Kendrick Law. It's a shame that somebody as talented as him hasn't been able to put more production on the field for Alabama. And then, Emmanuel Henderson, just 1 catch, 14 yards. It's not a lot of production that Alabama has been able to get out of Emmanuel Henderson as well. But I think really what Cole's doing in this, there's a lot of projecting going on. But for both Alabama and Auburn, I think Auburn at the end of the day does have more experience than Alabama at that wide receiver position. Just more games played. They just have more games played at the end of the day. And a lot of these Alabama wide receivers, like Emmanuel Henderson, has done a lot of special team stuff, but really hasn't been able to get on the field on the offensive side of the ball. But counterpoint to that, wide receivers don't really need a lot of experience. They can come in. We've seen plenty of guys come in as freshmen and be able to contribute, not just here at Alabama, but across the country. There have been plenty of freshman wide receivers who have come in and been able to put up good numbers, for any team really across the country. But at the end of the day, Alabama has the better quarterback. Peyton Thorne, in my opinion, is just dog water. He's not good at all. He threw for 1,700 yards last year, 16 touchdowns to 10 interceptions in 2023. That's just not going to get the job done in the SEC. So you got to have somebody that can get those wide receivers the ball to be able to make plays. And I think Alabama, at the end of the day, they're better set up at that wide receiver position because they have a better quarterback. This is what Cole said about the running back room now. He said, I like Auburn more in the backfield too. But then again, we haven't seen those two guys, being the Alabama guys, at full capacity, so they may end up being better than what we think they are right now. We just don't really know. Now, I will concede the fact that we know what Auburn has at that running back position. You got Jarquez Hunter, who was really good for Auburn last year. He had put up over 900 yards on 159 carries, a really solid 5.7 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns. Damari Alston did a little bit less, 320 yards, but still 5 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. And Auburn didn't take a running back in this past year's class, so those are going to be the two guys for them. You look over at the Alabama running back room, you got Jam Miller, you got Justice Haynes, Richard Young. All three of those guys are going to be workhorses for Alabama. But to Cole's point, we haven't really seen them a lot on the field. I think that these guys were better running backs than what Alabama had last year. And Jason McClellan and Roydell Williams, I think they would have put up better numbers, better production. But I'm super excited to see what Alabama can do with Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, as well as Richard Young. And who knows, maybe some of those younger guys as well, those freshmen, Daniel Hill, Kevin Riley also get in on the field at some point, but probably going to be more mop-up time for those guys. So I want to hear from you guys in the comments section right now. I think between Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, Alabama is set up very well at the running back position. But do you think two of those running backs get to 1,000 yards this year in 2024? Get down in the comments section. Let me know right now why for yes or in for no. We're going to talk about next, Cole Cubelic also talked about both Kadyn Proctor and Jalen Milroe. And if, Kadyn Proctor, his transferring to Iowa, hindered his development in any kind of way, as well as some of the things that Jalen Milroe needs to improve on in this 2024 season. But before we get into that, I want to give a shout out to Fanatics today. You can get up to 30% off right now on Alabama football jerseys. Just go to chatsports.com/Alabama jerseys. You can get the crimson ones. You can get the white ones. You can customize them. You can get a Kalen DeBoer jersey if you want to. You can go get some of those Alabama alumni jerseys as well. Get a Bryce Young jersey if you want to. Get a Jalen Milroe jersey if you want to. It's going to be a breakout season for him, I believe, this year. So I would love to have a Jalen Milroe jersey. Just go to chatsports.com/Alabama jersey. That link will be in the comments section and the description of today's show. And there'll also be a little clickable link right over there in the corner that you guys can click on. So Cole Cubelic talked about Kadyn Proctor's improvements and if his transferring to Iowa was going to hurt his development in some way, not being able to go through spring ball both at Iowa and at Alabama. He decided he wanted to transfer back to Alabama before spring ball got going at Iowa. So we didn't go through spring ball for them, and he wasn't able to transfer back to Alabama until after A-Day. So this is what Cole Cubelic had to say about Kadyn Proctor. He said, even though he's super talented, I think it proved on the field last year that he needs some development. So he misses spring ball at Iowa. He misses spring ball at Alabama. He had weight issues when he got to Alabama, and I think he's going to be one of the starters, but is he going to be a lot better than last year? It's hard for me to say yes to that just now. This is what Kadyn Proctor did last year. Let's be honest, guys. He wasn't very good. I understand he was a freshman, but 12 sacks is just not good. 23 hurries is not very good either. Now, he got better towards the end of the year, and then in that Michigan game, he had a hurt ankle, so kind of, regressed at the end, like in that last game. But, man, you need a whole lot more. Now, I do not necessarily agree that he had a weight problem coming into Alabama. I think Alabama kind of caused that weight problem a little bit. They wanted that offensive line to be a little bit bigger, and it just hindered the fact that, when the offensive linemen are bigger, it's going to slow them down a little bit. It's going to hinder their athleticism. So I think Kadyn Proctor needs to be that guy at the left tackle position for Alabama, because do we really trust Elijah Pritchett to go over there? I kind of like Wilkin Formby more at the right tackle position. Kadyn Proctor beat out Elijah Pritchett last year for that job as a freshman. So if Kadyn Proctor can't get it done for Alabama this year, I really don't know where they're going to go at that left tackle position. So let me know in the comments section right now, guys, what is your confidence level in Kadyn Proctor being better than he was last year? Scale it for me 1 to 10, 1 on the low end and 10 on the high end. Cole Cubelic also talked about Jalen Milroe on this podcast. He said Jalen Milroe is going to have to be more consistent and more accurate to be in this offense. The capabilities to kind of run around, move around, and do things. Keep in mind, he changed the identity of the offense multiple times last year. That thing went from a let's run the ball first to, okay, we can't, to a shot play offense, to kind of back to an, all right, let's try to implement some quarterback runs, which I don't think they did enough of, to, okay, let's let the quarterback kind of just do all of this, make his life a little bit easier as possible, and we'll just kind of figure it out from there. Now, this is what Jalen Milroe did last year. I agree with the fact that he needs to be a little bit more accurate. But he took care of the ball more, I think, than a lot of people expected him to. A lot of people were worried about those fumbles. Only lost 2 fumbles last year. One big one, though, unfortunately, was in that Michigan game. But what Jalen Milroe can do for you on the ground, what he can do for you throwing that deep ball, I think is very valuable to Alabama in this Kalen DeBoer offense. We look at the passing depth chart from PFF for Jalen Milroe last year. I think, last year, 16 touchdowns to 1 interception. That's an amazing ratio for balls 20-plus yards down the field. I think really what he's going to need to work on mostly is those balls 10 to 20 yards downfield. 4 touchdowns to 4 interceptions at that, distance is not very good. He needs to improve on that, and I think just being able to have an offensive-minded coach at the end of the day is going to help him do that. Now, one of the other biggest things that Jalen Milroe needs to improve on is the fact that he just holds on to the ball too long. These are some PFF stats for you with the total pressures, the percentage-wise, who allowed what. Jalen Milroe, they have him to blame for 22.6% of the pressures, and then Kadyn Proctor at 33% of the pressures, 50% of the pressures from 2 guys, right? 55% from 2 guys is not very good. And they also attributed 10 of the 30 sacks to Jalen Milroe. So you add the fact that Kadyn Proctor had 12 sacks allowed, that's 22 out of the 30 sacks from those 2 guys. You got to be better both at that left tackle position, and Jalen Milroe needs to be better. Be indecisive. Either throw the ball or take off, throw it away, do something with it. You can't just take sacks on, 1st and 10, 2nd and 7, things like that. Those are the things that are going to hurt you the most at the end of the day. Now, I said all that. But I do think Jalen Milroe is going to be a finalist for the Heisman this year. I think he's going to be able to do things on the ground. He's going to throw that deep ball. I think he's going to be better in that intermediate passing game. And if you think about it too, he finally has an offensive-minded coach. Nick Saban was a defensive-minded coach. He kind of, relied on those offensive coordinators to be able to help the quarterbacks develop. And who did he have at that offensive coordinator spot? You had Bill O'Brien, who is an absolute joke, who Jalen Milroe came out last year and said that Bill O'Brien straight up said that he didn't believe in him as a quarterback. And then Tommy Rees, who I thought was going to be better, but he just wasn't able to, get those playmakers the ball at the end of the day. It just wasn't very good at the offensive coordinator position. That was the reason that Nick Saban tried to go out and hire Ryan Grubb from Washington the year before. Unfortunately, he just wasn't able to get it done. Grubb decided to stay at Washington, and they went to the national championship last year with who else at the helm but Kalen DeBoer. So I think this year, Jalen Milroe is going to improve. I think he's going to be better for the fact that he has an offensive-minded coach and a coach who was a wide receiver in college. I think a lot of those things are going to help him. So I want to take a look at the subscriber tracker here at Chat Sports. We've got like 35, 36 channels, and we're kind of towards the bottom of it. We only been doing videos for a year now, but I want to get up to that 20,000 subscriber mark. I want to get into the next tier here at Chat Sports. So make sure you guys are subscribed right here to the Alabama Football Report, and we're going to have a whole lot of fun with you guys, so make sure you are subscribed.